Did you know that Stranger Things was originally pitched as an anthology? Every season was going to be based on a different real-life conspiracy, just like season 1 was based on the MK Ultra experiments. But imagine how different the show would have been. We would have never gotten to see Vecna or the Mind Flayer or these incredible relationships develop between characters like Joyce and Hopper or even Mike and Eleven. The creators definitely made the right choice with continuing the story that was set up in season 1, but now we're nearing the end of these characters' stories with the release of season 5. So in this video, I wanted to highlight and possibly even try to theorize about the 5 biggest unanswered questions we still have going into the final season. Will has been a focal point of the show since the very beginning, and as we learned in the sneak peek of season 5, this was clearly intentional. I was always confused as to why Will was spared by the Demogorgon in season 1, but other characters like Barb were killed pretty much immediately. The first 5 minutes of season 5 showed what Will got up to when he was lost in the Upside Down in season 1. Not only was he fighting for his life against the Demogorgon, but we also see that this was all a part of Vecna's plan. Vecna used the Demogorgon to hunt him down so that he could plant something inside of Will. And once Will got back, we saw him spit up Dart, but clearly that wasn't the only thing that Vecna planted inside of him. Vecna's plan was to capture Will, plant the shit inside of him, and then allow him to get captured so that Will could act as some kind of sleeper agent. We know that the Upside Down is a hive mind, so maybe by planting pieces of the Upside Down in Will, it ensured that Vecna would always have some sort of connection to the real world. But why Will? Sure, I mean, it could just be a coincidence. Will was alone and Vecna needed someone for his plan, so he grabbed him. But I think it goes deeper than that. In season 1, Joyce makes a lot of remarks about Will being different and special and that kind of thing. Plus, Will always played a mage or a wizard in their D&D games, and all the other characters' personalities follow their characters. For example, Mike is a paladin, the fearless leader. Lucas is a ranger, using his slingshot and always willing to get stuff done himself. And Dustin is a bard, the comedic relief with lots of skills and a penchant for music. Now, think about this. Vecna said it himself, that he was always different growing up. Then he develops these mysterious powers, which led him to where he is now. Maybe Vecna can sense that Will has some kind of hidden abilities too, that just haven't developed yet. Vecna also seems to be like decaying or becoming more and more corrupted by his time in the Upside Down. And we also know that he needs to connect himself to the vines of the Upside Down in order to like recharge or recover. So what if Vecna is trying to steal Will's body for his own? Will's body could be the perfect vessel, especially if Will has already developed some sort of connection with the Upside Down through his time there in season 1 and all that shit that Vecna pumped into him. Another thing we may see, if my theory about Will having powers is right, is him assisting Eleven in taking down Vecna in the end. Maybe we see Eleven train Will over the course of the season in order to aid her in that final confrontation. I think this would be kind of a full circle moment for Will to help defeat the being who got him involved in all this to begin with. But speaking of Eleven, this leads me to my next question. One thing that has always confused me about this show is Eleven's connection to the Upside Down. Now, obviously, Elle can open and close the gates, but why is her story so deeply intertwined with this seemingly completely separate alternate dimension? Vecna and her seem to have this unique connection with this alternate reality and the creatures that originate from it, being really the only ones who can control and or hurt them. I do think that Vecna is actually the answer to the question that I'm asking. We've seen that Eleven's powers came from experimentation on her pregnant mother, while Vecna's somehow developed naturally. Now, honestly, I haven't seen it, but in the Stranger Things prequel Broadway show, The First Shadow, apparently it hints that Vecna's powers may have actually came from making contact with the Upside Down. Now, if that's true, maybe both Vecna and Eleven draw from the same source, meaning that her powers are literally connected to the Upside Down. It would explain how her and Vecna can both uniquely interact with the creatures and the energy of the Upside Down. It might also explain Will's weird sensitivity to it, if the Upside Down can kind of like mark people like it did with Vecna. Now, there is also the theory that Vecna isn't actually in control at all, and that he is actually also just a pawn for the real big bad, the Mind Flayer. We know that the Mind Flayer existed long before Henry was ever sent to the Upside Down. And now why would this ancient, evil, godlike being from another dimension submit to a human? It really doesn't make any sense. Now, it could be that Henry just truly is that powerful and bent it to his will, but I think it's a lot more likely that the Mind Flayer is truly the one pulling the strings. And also, just before I get away from talking about everyone's powers, what do you guys think their plan is for Eleven's sister Kali? I think that's how you say her name. Do you think they'll bring her back, or did they just abandon her storyline? I could see her returning to help Eleven defeat Vecna, maybe distracting him with one of her illusions to give the group an opening. But speaking of characters that I think will be making a return, my next big question is... Now, there has been a running theory that Eddie Munson will be returning in Season 5 that started due to his actor, Joseph Quinn, repeatedly teasing his return, even though the Duffer Brothers have repeatedly shut down these rumors, confirming that the character is dead and will not be returning. Now, maybe he really is dead, but what if the Duffer Brothers are just trying to throw us off because the fans nailed it with their cast theory? Now, I'm sure almost all of you have heard this theory by now, but for the people who don't spend their time reading Reddit theories like me, the cast theory goes like this. Cass the Betrayer is a character in Dungeons & Dragons lore who was an undead vampire and the general of Vecna's army, who inevitably betrayed the Lich, leading to Vecna's demise. And now, Eddie died by bats and has a tattoo of a group of bats, and obviously bats are connected to vampires, we all know this. And the first time we see him, he makes a devil horn gesture on his head, which is reminiscent of the devil horned helmet that Cass wears. Him and Dustin wielded spiked shields like one of Cass's signature weapons. Eddie also played Master of Puppets by Metallica, maybe symbolizing Vecna's manipulation of everyone like a puppet master. So what if Vecna plans to resurrect Eddie as his undead general to lead his army, which according to the theory, leads to Eddie eventually rebelling against Vecna, betraying him, and helping him take him down once and for all. There are some other theories surrounding Eddie, but this just fits the Stranger Things theme of adapting Dungeons & Dragons source material just almost too perfectly. Plus, I mean, come on. It would just be awesome to see an undead Eddie leading Vecna's army into Hawkins. But now with all that out of the way, we can get into some of the more lighthearted questions, such as... Stranger Things was built with the emotional core of these characters first, and the cool alternate dimension and monsters second. The show doesn't work unless we are invested in the main characters and all the drama that comes with them. Throughout the seasons, they have all experienced some sort of emotional turmoil, but how do you guys think it will all end up? For starters, we finally got to see Joyce and Hopper hook up in Season 4. And I mean, we all saw that coming from a mile away. Hopper's character is one of the core pillars of the show, so watching him go from a man who lost his wife and daughter to finding a new family with Joyce and Eleven has been honestly beautiful. It seems like their love life is pretty buttoned up for the moment, but as we all know, I'm sure they'll experience some growing pains throughout Season 5. Next up is the kids. Max and Lucas seem to be on the right track, that is, as long as Max wakes up, which I'm sure she will. But just like everyone else, their relationship definitely took its lumps in Season 4, but I think these two will work out. Then there's Mike and Eleven, the show's true main characters. They have also faced their fair share of challenges in their relationship, but I've honestly always loved Mike's line about how his life first started the day that they found Elle in the woods. I think that these two will be fine. The only complication here seems to be Will. Season 4 made it pretty clear that Will seems to be in love with Mike, so it'll definitely be interesting to see them deal with all of that tension there in Season 5. But now for the love triangle that everyone loves to debate about. Is Nancy going to end up with Jonathan or end up with Steve in the end? Now personally, Steve is probably my favorite character in the whole show, and with it not going to work out with Robin for obvious reasons, I would love to see Nancy end up with Steve. But it feels like that would just leave Jonathan's character in like kind of a shitty place. It definitely seems like her and Jonathan were drifting apart in season 4 though, with all the college stuff. And this would leave a nice window for Steve to swoop in. But honestly, they may be setting it up for Nancy to choose neither of them and go off to college and be her own person. Like I said though, as much as I would like Steve to end up with Nancy, unfortunately, I think Steve may have a different ending. And thus, that leads me to my final question I want answered, and that is... writing the ending of something is always the hardest part. We've seen great shows' reputations be ruined by bad endings. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Game of Thrones. But I believe the Duffer Brothers will be able to wrap this story up nicely and stick the landing. But I've got a bad feeling there's going to be at least one heartbreaker in there. I 100% think that Steve is going to die. He's played this protector role for way too long. And what happens to the protector in most stories? He ends up sacrificing himself to save the group. I could see him sacrificing himself to save Nancy, while also confessing to her that he's always loved her. It would be super sad, but also a satisfying ending for the character. I also wouldn't be surprised if at least one more character dies, but I'm not exactly sure who. So if you have any ideas, let me know down below. Outside of the deaths though, I think that Vecna's story will end with Will and Eleven teaming up to defeat him once and for all, with Eleven probably using up the last of her strength, leading to her losing her powers for good this time. I think this would be a good way to end her story and allow her to finally live a truly normal life. With Vecna defeated and Eleven's powers gone, the rift between Hawkins and the Upside Down will finally be closed for good. My prediction is the final moments of the show will be everyone at Steve's funeral, before a time jump showing how everyone has finally been able to move on and live happily ever after. The show will close on all the kids playing a game of D&D to mirror the opening of the show, only this time, Max and Eleven will be there as well. So those are my 5 biggest unanswered questions going into Season 5. What kind of questions do you guys have? And do you guys think some of my theories are right, or am I an idiot? Drop any thoughts on this video or about the final season just in general down in the comments. And if you made it to the end of the video, I just want to say thank you. And if you enjoyed, to please consider subscribing and leaving a like on the video. Alright, thank you guys again. Peace.